Hello, everybody. This is a special episode. Today, we have none other than Frank Young, who is joining me for a long-form conversation about spirituality, enlightenment, and all other related topics. Most of you know who he is. He's pretty well known. So without further ado, let me bring him on stage.
What's up,
Frank!
man? What's up, Artem?
Hi! Hi! Hello, my friend. It's good to see your face. Finally, we have a long-form conversation.
Yeah, we
Finally.
talked before. Yeah, but never recorded it.
Yes, many times.
Yeah, I discovered your blog. I don't know how I discovered it, but like,
Quora, probably.
yeah, Quora, exactly. But I don't know what I Google or whatever. But then when I came across like your stages of enlightenment thing, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's probably the most interesting way that someone has described the stage of enlightenment. So I would like to read it actually for the people that haven't read that. It's just very short.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, what are the levels of enlightenment? You said there are no levels of enlightenment, but there are levels of dreaming. And every level has its own layers of bondage, which you progressively shed as you move towards the center. On the outer level of dreaming, you're a person in the body, looking outside of the body into the physical world and relating to other persons. You are a slave to society. On the deeper level of dreaming, you are a soul occupying the body and you relate to other souls on an energetic level. You are a slave to your emotional energy. On a deeper still level of dreaming, you are consciousness, God, a being of pure compassion and unconditional love. You are everything and everyone, the deepest form of love. You are a slave to love. On the deepest level of dreaming, you are Brahman, the totality of all existence, infinity beyond manifest. You are truly nothing, eternity, and the deepest form of peace. You are a slave to death. When all dreaming ceases, you are just a hairless monkey walking on a ball of rock, eating, pooping, living, and not imagining things are not there. You are not free. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like talking about spirituality using ordinary language.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when I read that, there was still a lot of like Brahman God consciousness stuff in my field of experience. Not like it's gone. I mean, it's just what it is.
Yes,
But
of course, it's always present.
yeah, but then like when you're still deconditioning the self, there's a lot of projection for the rest of the condition to cling on to and be like, okay, this Brahma, whatever is a thing, you verify it. And then there's still a little bit clinging there. There's still a separation between you and Brahman or you and God. And what I say is that when you realize something, it's like you ingest like a piece of fruit or something. It becomes you. So it's like an apple that cannot see itself. Once you realize something, it disappears.
Yes.
You don't need to call it God. I think you say it's like love. It's like when wind is like itself, blowing itself. It doesn't feel itself, and that's unconditional love. It's only something solid in the center that's still resisting, that feels. And then when I read that, I was like, it dissolved a lot of spiritual conditionings. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
I'm happy. I'm very happy. I was
a direct pointer. Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. Yes, you are actually precisely right. Everything that is sufficiently integrated disappears. So even sufficiently integrated unconditional love disappears as a kind of a very prominent part of experience, and a sufficiently integrated peace or equanimity, and you can also notice in other people that are undergoing the transformation is that for as long as it hasn't been sufficiently integrated, there is a tendency to boast about it, to kind of present yourself as. So people present themselves as an unconditional loving, unconsciously, of course, or they present themselves as equanimous. There's a tendency to kind of to make it important so that other people see you as loving or equanimous or realized, and all of this actually disappears in complete enlightenment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Back then, when I was still trying to be perceived as somebody who's realized, but then once I go through even more unfoldment or more dropping away of conditioning, there's absolutely no need to be recognized as anything.
Yes.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that you can't talk about it, that you can't like put yourself out there. But there's no triggers around it. There's no identification around the role.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's precisely right. And it actually comes from the fact that the confusion about it comes from the fact that the journey is much, much longer and much, much deeper than most people.
I agree. Yeah.
And there are very few people that actually go to this last stage, and when they do, it's usually very late, and most never do. And the only reason I did is I entirely contributed to my use of psychedelics. But for example, when I think of Osho, only very late in his life he started saying things like, "My spirit and my body are finally one." So that's the full embodiment where the spirit consciousness awareness just completely disappears from mental landscape, and you become just entirely average and he ordinary. I meant, and he went into silence for like 2 or 3 years. If you really think about it, if you really consider it, 2 or 3 years of silence is 2 or 3 years of continued meditation. Because if you don't talk to anyone, ego exists in relationships.
Yeah.
That's why the mental chatter and stuff like that. So if you don't talk to anybody for 2 or 3 years, you are meditating nonstop for 2 or 3 years. Even if you're doing all the other things like eating and stuff, that's continued meditation. So imagine how deep the actual journey goes. And if he felt like something was incomplete, and then he meditated for 2 or 3 years, and when he arose, he started describing it in different terms, and like saying that he's now entirely, completely ordinary, and he realized what it means to be Maitreya, a friend, not a teacher, not a lord, but a friend, a complete equal.
Yeah.
3 years of meditation for someone who is already as deeply realized as Osho. So it's insane, and he spoke also very, very correctly and eloquently about what happens when it happens. And he says once this happens, it becomes impossible to recognize it. He says the person who went that far, he actually described it as beyond Gautama Buddha, and I would agree. A person who went that far becomes completely unrecognizable. He says he begins slipping out of your hands. He said those who witnessed his transformation may still know who he is, but the new ones, they would never be able to recognize him.
Yeah.
I'll finish it.
Sorry, go ahead.
And if you think about it, there is some like a very, very deep cosmic joke in it, like a very, very, very deep sort of justice in it, right? Because you have to become completely ordinary, and that means that you're completely unrecognizable. But since I went through most of my transformation alone, without any students, without nothing, just sitting in a house, then most people have only seen me in this state, and in this state, most spiritual teacher perceive me as completely ignorant, because I'm just no different from anyone, pretty much. So there's some weird dynamics of perception that are going on the deeper stages.
Yeah, I think Osho said he was talking about Jiddu Krishnamurti. He's like, I like him a lot, but he was too enlightened. He was like,
right,
to even go beyond appearing as enlightened, or even cling on to the whole notion of enlightenment and become ordinary.
That is exactly right.
I mean, non-enlightenment is a duality, right? So it's almost like going beyond nirvana or beyond Brahma.
Oh, this is. I'm glad that you mentioned it. This is actually more than correct. This is very, very deep, because you must go beyond nirvana. That's the difference between arhats and bodhisattvas that abide in nirvana and Buddhas. So it's been said that Buddhas abide in a place beyond nirvana and samsara. So they are in both. They realize their equivalence.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it was, I heard once saying that there are one foot in nirvana, one foot in samsara, or I also heard the saying nirvana is the last delusion, and that's right. And there's what separates abiding nirvana from non-abiding nirvana, where nirvana and samsara are seen to be one, is usual pain. and the result, the remaining conditioning of the ego.
Yeah, it's the same recognition as emptiness is form and nirvana is samsara. But when nirvana is samsara, it goes beyond both of them. It's neither nirvana nor samsara.
That's right.
Nirvana only exists with samsara, right? But when they're totally integrated, they both disappear.
That's correct. Yes, it's very interesting. But it's such an interesting observation.
Actually, Buddha, that's why he calls the middle way. For me, the middle way is not a point between two extremes. It's actually that which transcends both sides of the duality. You could include both sides of the duality, but then at the end, we just play with language. It's like, okay, nirvana, samsara, same thing, but also neither of them really exist. They're just concepts or some experiences.
Yes. And I wanted to add that this interesting concept, the way of looking at it as whatever merges together disappears, and the middle path, it applies to all psychological phenomena, right? Right. For example, humility and pride, which are just two sides of the same coin. Like humility is pride reverse. So when they merge together, they disappear, and there's neither humility nor pride, just honesty, truthfulness. And it applies equally to nirvana and samsara, and they merge together and disappear completely, and that is the difference, in my view, between people whom we can call arhats and bodhisattvas. So it's just like humility and pride, whereas with humility and pride, the difference is, am I kind of above others, or am I below others? With regards to arhats and bodhisattvas, the difference is they're both in nirvana, but the difference is their relationship with nirvana. So arhats are like, well, sometimes not necessarily arhats. There's like a lot of confusion about terminology because different traditions use different terminology. But let's say solitary Buddhas. They're like, my nirvana is for me. So they aren't like real Buddhas yet, but like my nirvana is for me. All the other people don't get it. And bodhisattvas, that abide in nirvana, an authentic nirvana. So with deep realization, not like those on the way who just aspire, but real. They say, my nirvana is for others. I absolutely have to bring, right? And this duality, and I saw it in my experience, and this duality is transcended upon transcendence of the difference between nirvana and samsara, and it becomes both. It becomes both for you, because it's the ultimate enjoyment, and for others, because you
know the difference between doing it for yourself or for others.
Exactly. There is no difference anymore.
And doing it to itself.
Yeah. That's precisely right. So all of the path is like about merging dualities, and then they go away.
Yeah, they go away. Yeah,
it's the most insane thing in the world.
It's incredible, actually. Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think Osho said something about how Gautama Buddha choose to stand on the ground of enlightenment in order to teach. So he obviously probably has gone beyond that, but then he wanted to, I think he was going around like debating with the Brahmins and saying like, oh, Brahman was still a level of dreaming. But then like he was very adamant about his own like realization. Like I think after his enlightenment, he was going around and telling people how much more enlightened he was than everybody else, and how he entered this kind of jhana, how like he was open to for debates. And then for him to play the role of the enlightened being without any kind of suffering in it, he has to go beyond it, and then coming back and put on the enlightenment suit. Yeah, and then I also think you mentioned something really interesting about how you can't really tell who's somebody who is quote unquote done versus somebody who is going through the process. You can tell when somebody's going through the process because usually there's a lot of energetic shifts in their body, and you can tell like their eyes will like beam with lights and they were act very compassionate. Sure. And like I've been there myself. Like I documented my entire journey. And then if you watch some of my older stuff, like my eyes were like, and a lot of people like were drawn to that.
Right. I was the same.
When I look at like my videos, it's like it's just some like dude talking, right? But then there's way more peace in here now than before.
Yes.
Before there was a lot of bliss, but actually bliss is actually a form of contraction. Bliss and dark night of the soul are actually two sides of the same coin.
That is absolutely correct.
And if you start teaching at that spot, and that's when you can get a lot of followers.
That's right.
People who are kind of still in the same spot as you, they will be drawn to you.
Yes.
Right. So if you're in that stage and then you begin teaching already, it's very easy to never get out of that stage.
Yes.
But at the same time, that could also be used as a catalyst for you to see through more of your delusions.
That's right.
So it depends on how you look at it. It's kind of like the same point you made about Osho going to the cave, or even Ramana Maharshi. He went to the cave for like 2 years, right? He was just alone. And some people's path would be like, okay, they have a self-realization event, they enter non-duality, whatever, and then you still need a few years of integration. And some people's integration, if you follow sort of like the Vajrayana path, it's going out there into the world and then let life dissolve you, because life is going to bring up all of your conditionings regardless.
That's right.
So they both kind of work. Some people's path is going to the cave. Yes. Some people's path is going out there and just let life dissolve their conditioning. And then for me, it was a little bit both. There's like, there's phases where I have to be alone, completely alone. There are phases where I go out there, meet a bunch of people, talk to a lot of spiritual people, making videos, and then see what kind of condition gets arised when I do those things. Or, you know, go out there and just have fun, enjoy life, like drink beer, have sex, whatever. But then you'll see that all those things, when they start to drop away, they never come back anymore after some.
That's right. Yes.
It's the same mechanism as psychedelics, which we can talk about later.
Yes.
Psychedelics is like a forced meditation that allows you to just dissolve.
Let me first make a small comment about what you just said, and then we'll talk about psychedelics. First of all, you're very insightful, my friend. You're very clear on a lot of things. You are precisely right in everything that you said. I very rarely have conversations like this. I have no disagreement with you at all. The bliss, the way that I describe the bliss, actually, you can describe it as contraction. That's fine. It's important not to sort of put some sort of a negative attribute to it.
Right.
Because a lot of people, they feel, but the way that I describe bliss is like just nothing but temporary side effect of dropping away some of the pain.
Right.
Because every relationship is relative. So if you're used to pain and now there is less pain, you say, "Oh, bliss." Right. But when there is no more pain, I mean emotional, energetic pain, not physical pain, that always stays. But when the mind is completely painless, and my mind is extraordinarily painless, much more painless than any mind that I have ever spoken to. When it is painless, you cannot be perceiving any bliss. What bliss? And that's why someone, I don't remember who, he said, bliss is not the destination. So and then you're also exactly on point with regards to growing the audience, and that most people get stuck. So it's much easier to grow the audience, for example, when you embody unconditional love, because that's what you want to show to everyone. You want to hug everyone, you want to smile to everyone, and I was the same. It was a part of my experience. When you become very ordinary, it becomes much harder. And so when I speak to when I went through all of the stages alone with the support of my wife, and it was an extraordinary amount of pain. So I cried every day out of compassion and everything for years, for like 2-3 years. There was so much rage. There was like so much all of this, right? So when I actually came out to teach, now when I speak to most spiritual teachers, I'm met universally with contempt and ridicule and mistreatment, almost universally. We probably shouldn't be actually calling names, but those people know who they are. Some of them have a lot of following. You know, some of them are quite well known. Some of them are interviewed, and some of them basically just libeled me, coming up with crazy stories about me, calling me a narcissist, calling me a quack. You know, who on earth can be crying for 3 years out of compassion and be a narcissist? It's an incredible insult. It's an insult to truth. It's an insult to me. And we actually right now have a lot of people in the spiritual circle who owe me an apology. And I hope that maybe one day they will speak to me or spend some time in my presence, and we will actually reconcile, and I will hear an apology from them. The other interesting aspect of this journey is that it's possible to recognize the past stages, right? So just like you were describing, when somebody in this weary-eyed love.
I usually talk about like awareness or abiding the formless, or love, or any kind of consciousness.
Yes.
Tell by some of the vocabularies they use, how they look. They go, I used to talk like that. I used to look like that.
That's right. Because we can only recognize our past selves. We can only recognize our our experience that we went through, but it's not possible to recognize what is still in front of you. And so there's a very interesting consequence of that, which is I recognize everyone's insight. I understand. I recognize Daniel's insight. I recognize Michael Taft's insight. I recognize everyone's insight. I recognize Adyashanti's insight. I think he's one of the deepest realist teachers. So I recognize, and I speak to my students, and I would not be against anyone. So as help or guide to them, right? So if they say I've been reading Adya, I say great, wonderful. He's a deeply realist teacher, right? So I recognize their insight, but they don't recognize mine, and it's just mind-boggling. It's so ungrateful. It's so unfair in a way, that you recognize everyone. It's like yes, this is great. That's a good teacher. That's a good realized teacher, and no one reciprocates. So it's the ultimate travesty. And actually, I have some hopes that our conversations will help remedy that in some ways, at least for some people.
Well, I do want to say you're very honest and just very open about this.
It's true. I mean, yeah, that's what the path is about. It's just being open and honest and truthful.
And the part you said about the bliss, to me, bliss and pleasure and pain are just two sides of the same coin as well. Yes. Yeah. And also, I also want to say that everybody can only really perceive their own mind.
That's true.
Too. So when somebody talks shit about another person, they're actually revealing more about themselves than other people. Because we're all walking around in this virtual reality bubble, in a sense, right? And then, like, I think you said in one of your posts that you don't wake up from your mind. All you have is your mind. Sure, you become all of your mind, but you wake up from the thought of the ego into the entire brain or entire mind.
It actually depends on what we mean by the mind.
Oh yeah, that's true too. What did you do when you wrote that? Like, I found that to be a very useful line to share as well. You said something about how I think it was one of your talks with your student. You said you don't wake up from the mind because all you have is the mind. And you said something about you are the quote unquote God of the universe, of your universe. You are the creator of your own universe, and everything that you perceive is just your projections.
Yes. So the clarification that I'd like to make here is also why I sometimes use the word brain instead of mind. So kind of because it's hard to come up with the terminology, and I don't like the spiritual terminology, like all of these words students need to learn to try to understand their teacher. I think this is just, in some ways, even disrespectful to students. So I like to use the language that everyone understands.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand as it is. Mm-hmm. You see, and so we don't need to come up with a lot of terms. But basically, the way that I defined mind is the combination of the totality of beliefs that are unsubstantiated and are not true. And when I speak about the brain, I say that basically, if you really think about it, if you really consider it, then you will realize that everything that you can experience is your brain. You cannot experience anything else, because when you look at something, you're not actually looking at what it really looks like. A mouse or a fly would be looking at the same object, and they wouldn't see it the same way, right? So you're not actually looking at objective reality from this perspective. You are looking at your perception of reality. Exactly. But the mind is something else. The mind is a different beast entirely. Speaking the way that we're talking about it, it doesn't make a lot of practical consequence. It doesn't have a lot of practical consequence, because we're all humans and we all perceive reality, sense reality, like vision, more or less the same way. Yes, there are some differences, but more or less the same way. It's not like we see drastically different.
We're all human beings. But then when you talk about the mind is the one that's filtering your pure sensory experience.
That's right.
To something that is a story or narrative.
Right. Yes. And so the mind
made that distinction.
And so the mind is very different. And the mind, in the mind, so there's layers of the dreaming that you read before. They all in the mind. They're not so you can say that the mind is creation of the brain, obviously, because everything is a brain. But the mind is different. The mind distorts sense perceptions. That's right. And the mind creates the psychological reality, which is unreal. And through these layers, it is destroyed on the journey. And the mind, the complete enlightenment is basically a complete disappearance of the mind. So in complete enlightenment, I believe there are no night dreams at all, for the same very reason. I have experienced it multiple times. I mean, sometimes from time to time, right now, I still dream a little. And so sometimes from time to time, when I take a very large amount of psychedelics, and I have some experience, it's pretty slight, but some experience. So all experiences of psychedelics are experiences of the mind, not of the brain. At least when we talk about classic psychedelics, which are completely safe and things like that. And so when someone like Osho says that enlightenment is the realization of no mind, he's speaking about mind in this way.
Right.
But when you say that everything is mind,
I was talking about what
you're actually talking about the brain.
Yeah.
So I wanted to clarify this a little.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but then there's also people that use the word mind to describe your moment-to-moment experience of just what this is, or they use the word consciousness. So they will say things like everything is consciousness, and you never seen your brain. Even the brain is within consciousness. The body is within consciousness, and the whole world is within consciousness. You can say like that as well, but those are just grammatical differences.
Yes. And the where the rubber hits the road is actually not how you describe it. There are a lot of people who where the rubber hits the road.
Oh, okay.
Is actually not how you describe it. So there are a lot of people who describe it in a different way.
Yeah.
Where the rubber hits the road is how much of the mind, this sort of mind that we talked about, is still left, because everything that is left of this mind is painful. And so when I meet someone and I can I can create pain in them with my mere words, I'm completely nonviolent, right? So words are just words. What is a word? Word is a meaning that came into your mind, and if this meaning creates any amount of pain or discomfort, then actually it's not healthy. A healthy individual cannot be physically, and because all emotions and energetic experiences are actually physical experiences. That's why the path is a very physical path, as you just said.
Yeah. I always say this path is a very physical and biological process.
Extraordinary. You're absolutely correct.
I didn't realize that until very later on.
That's right.
Yeah, because when you're still in the mind, this whole path seems like it's something of the spirit or of the mind, of like consciousness.
It's a bodily path.
It's a biological transformation.
It's a very bodily path.
Also the bodybuilding than spirituality, actually. That's why I use a lot of bodybuilding analogy to describe the progression, to make people think about it differently.
Yes, that's also why the body completely relaxes in enlightenment. Right. There are no tensions in the body, and the so coming back to my point, if the individual is healthy, a healthy individual, a healthy living being, if someone else creates a painful or uncomfortable in any way, actually, in completely any way, bodily experience, by simply pronouncing words that create meaning, right? So some meaning creates a bodily painful response in you. This is a sign of some leftover sickness from conditioning. This is not healthy. A healthy individual cannot be pained this way. That's why I said that enlightenment is the ultimate health and the ultimate equanimity, right? It's you. If someone larger than you, much larger than you, shows anger towards you, aggression, just like an animal world, yes, this could create fear. That's fine, right? But if someone who is completely non-threatening to you, and by the way, all internet conversations, text or video, are completely safe for the body, right?
I think a lot of people get super triggered by text, and
Yes, no. Of course, because the conditioning is triggered. But my point was, if someone who is smaller than you does not display, you cannot see it with your eyes, like physical aggression, anger, like "Arr!" You see, and is not threatening to your body in any way, and just with words that has some meaning creates any sort of energetic bodily response in you, your spiritual work continues.
Mhm.
That's that's all I wanted to say, basically.
I agree. Yeah, and then I think we talk about the psychedelics as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're a good proponent of psychedelics for how it's contributed to your own realization.
tremendously.
Yeah, so I had a experience recent after self-realization. I took psychedelics a few times. Um, when I was still unfolding, like the Kundalini stuff was still going on. I took like maybe a quarter tap of LSD, and then it felt like a DMT trip.
That's right.
And then once the state started to stabilize, I've done salvia with no effect.
I'm not surprised.
I've done ayahuasca with very little effect, almost no effect. I took the most psychedelics, the most LSD I've taken since self-realization was about 2 weeks ago. I took 2.5 taps of LSD, which is nothing compared to how much you've taken. But I want to work myself up to see what happens. I haven't really became inspired to take psychedelics for a while, but I took 2.5 taps and then nothing happened. There was no trips. There was no psychedelic experience. There was a little bit of bodily.
Some energetic
I'm
movement.
energetic, but in the body, but there was no trip, no visual distortion,
That's right. That's right. Yes.
no hallucination, nothing in the audio field changed. It wasn't a trip at all. Like, so I haven't actually tripped, even with psychedelics, for more than 3 years.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
All
very,
hallucinations.
very interesting.
All hallucinations are of the mind.
Right.
And
All psychedelic experiences or spiritual experiences or bliss are the byproduct and the
Yes.
side effect of the dissolution of the mind or condition.
That's precisely correct. So in my experience, the larger doses of psychedelics, they definitely hit you harder. And so like and also there's a weird effect of quick buildup of tolerance. I'm not just talking about tolerance in between administrations. So like you should wait like at least 4 or 5 days, ideally a week or 2 weeks between administration. But I'm talking about tolerance with regards to the trip itself. Like for example, the the it, the experience of taking, like for example, one tab of LSD, going through some experience, being really relaxed, and then taking another, and then taking another, and then taking another after 1 hour, and then you realize, and you actually know this, that you can continue taking it and nothing's going to happen because you're completely satisfied with your present experience. This experience I first had like 3 or 4 years ago, right? I took like this slowly over the course of like 24 hours. I took like 10 tabs of LSD, 35 grams of mushrooms, things like that. I've spoken to people who can do this. I think many self-realized people can do this, get to this place, and then it sort of doesn't affect them. It's a totally different thing to take 10 tabs as one single administration, right? So there has been still a lot of sorry, there have still been a lot of tears, a lot of experience before I could do that, and I could do like take 10 tabs and have a very mild experience, or a trip that lasts for like 20-30 minutes and no hallucinations, and even though there's still some months of pain, but a continued relaxation, and the state that you're in is not different, is only very, very mildly different.
Very, very about different, yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to work myself up to see maybe I'll eventually take 10 taps if something calls for it. But
yes. So actually, this person, let me look it up. His name, Neem Karoli Baba. So Neem Karoli Baba was Ram Dass's guru.
I heard story. Yeah.
Yes, and Ramdas gave him 1,200 micrograms, and he didn't experience anything. And that's actually the completely enlightened state. So I think that all dreams disappear in enlightenment, and that's been my experience with psychedelic trips. Like, for example, one time I took a very significant amount of, actually that was quite recently. So I took a very significant amount of LSD, which was 800 mics. The whole experience lasted 20, 30 minutes. It was quite painful, actually, but for 5 minutes maybe. And then it was the same. I did not trip at all. And even what's interesting about it, and it's just such an extraordinarily interesting phenomenology. I'm surprised no one speaks to me about it. I'll cover it later. But the interesting thing about it, that even like on psychedelics, there is breathing. It's like, for example, a lot of people report you might not even have any difficult emotional and energetic experience or anything like that, but if you pay attention to reality, it sort of like moves a little bit. It's like it's as if it's alive.
Yeah,
Did you experience that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the result of things becoming less solidified. That's why sometimes in meditation, when you enter jhanas, or even when you undergo the dissolution without psychedelics, or just from meditation, sometimes you experience psychedelic effects when things start to breathe. That's because things are becoming less solid. That's why dream is quote unquote less solid than quote unquote reality.
Yes.
And it's actually the same thing. It's just that you're dissolving. That's why things start to breathe. But then,
yes,
it's like sometimes I describe this process as dissolving from solidity to liquid to smoke to air. But once you become air, you kind of go back to being solid. But except now it's just a hologram.
Yes,
I think it's just quote unquote empty.
Yes. So yeah.
There's no trippy stuff anymore.
So even this slight breathing. So I'm not even talking about like visual trips or any visual distortions, significant visual distortions. I mean, like but even this very slight breathing, in my experience, I don't think that it's any physical effect at all, because like the last time I did it, this experience that I'm describing to you was the least amount of slight breathing. It was pretty much nothing at all. So everything, I think that everything ultimately will just become completely solid. Mm-hmm. And the what I wanted to mention to you is that afterwards, I had for the very first time in my life, I had a tremendously interesting experience, because the very same day in the evening, I vaped 5-MeO DMT for 2 minutes straight, taking very deep breaths, and absolutely nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. I actually I vaped a little more. I increased the voltage, and I vaped a little more, but like 2 minutes of very deep breaths. Can you imagine that? And so like five or six. It was 2 minutes because I was holding it for a very long time, right? I was holding it as long as I could, right? So every inhalation was like, I don't know, 15 seconds, something like that, 10 maybe. And so and afterwards, I actually vaped a little bit more. I increased the voltage, and I had some experience, but it was basically just. It was 10 seconds of fear. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary how deep the actual authentic journey really is. How insane the amount of egoic conditioning really is. And I'm also continually saddened by the fact that no one wants to take a look at my brain from the scientific perspective. I have reached out to many psychedelic researchers. I have reached out to MAPS. I've reached out to Johnny Hopkins. I reached out to UC Berkeley, to all the psychedelic researchers that study psychedelics, and basically said, hey, I possess an extraordinarily rare presence of mind. I can consume a lot of psychedelics and continue to be lucid. It's not a genetic thing. It's not a question of tolerance, because I went through a lot of pain, and I was, just like you described, very, very sensitive to psychedelics. Like after the self-realization, everyone becomes extremely sensitive to psychedelics.
Yeah,
so it was the same case for me. Like I would just take 1-2 vapes of THC, and it would be like a DMT trip. So and I would say, would you like to speak to me? Let's enhance humanity's understanding of psychedelics. Let's enhance the humanity's understanding of enlightenment. Let's look at the MRI of my brain, something like that. Let's demystify psychedelics, because there is absolutely nothing that in science that contradicts enlightenment. Science and enlightenment are not contradictory. Science is the objective study of the external. Enlightenment is the objective study of the internal. They absolutely go hand in hand together. And I have not received a single response. And I'm continually saddened by this. And I also hope that maybe this video will change it.
Interesting.
Oh, I want to mention one thing. If anyone is watching, anyone who is listening to it, please don't take doses that we're describing here. It's irresponsible if you do this without years of spiritual practice, without knowing yourself deeply. Responsible use of psychedelics is what helps on the spiritual path. Irresponsible use of psychedelics oftentimes leads to prolonged psychotic episodes, and even though elements of psychosis, elements of schizophrenia will be present at some way, in some form or another on the spiritual path, because the mind is compartmentalized and is dreaming and imagining a lot of things, and it's very fearful. There could be a lot of paranoia. There's no reason to bring it up in such intensity. It can be very disorienting. It can be very disturbing. That's not the word that I wanted to use. Well, it's not good for your life. Basically, it can be. What's the word that I?
I think most people who experiment with psychedelics, they just don't know how to use it.
Disruptive.
Oh.
It can be very disruptive for your life, and can be very disruptive for the life of others. So be careful with these things. Know your limits. Establish yourself in meditation. Establish yourself in awareness before experimenting with larger doses of psychedelics. That's important. So be safe, please.
Yeah, I think people, just like they can get stuck in bliss, people who experiment with psychedelics on a spiritual path, they get too caught up in the content, but they're actually just tripping on their own conditionings. And then they're adding more condition on top of that, or they have an experience and they attribute it to some kind of a nature of reality or to God or anything beyond themselves. Then that's when people get stuck. But if you use it as a means to just dissolve that instead of tripping in that and then making stories out of that, and just adding more conditioning, then it's like that. I think it's a very powerful tool.
It's a wonderful tool. It's an amazing tool.
Powerful after
especially that's right. Especially powerful after
actually before civilization. You're not going to be able to see that it's just conditioning. Even after civilization, it's hard to see until it starts to really dissolve. Because I think you said something similar. It's like you can't really understand something unless you lose it.
Yes. Yeah. You understand it in retrospect. Yes.
Yeah, you understand it in retrospect. So of course, like if you still have those conditions, you can't really see it. So, but then if someone points it out to you, then you can cut through a lot of bullshit, I think.
Yes. But by the way, even before self-realization,
of course,
psychedelics can be tremendously healing. And the way that psychedelics work is they open you up to experience. That's one thing. But of course, before self-realization, it is irresponsible to use very large doses. Even though some people do, and they're fine, like Terence McKenna and other people, and some people like Terence McKenna even advocate for that. I would not advocate for that because I have seen how much pain was in myself and how much pain is in the average person. So I think that it needs to be treated responsibly. But in smaller doses, what psychedelics do is they open you up to experience, thus somewhat loosening, shaking the resistance of the ego, and they also have a very interesting tendency to show you what you're missing. Like for example, I discovered psychedelics in the midst of what most people would describe as spiritual people. Some spiritual people, not most, but some spiritual people would describe as the dark night of the soul. So it was a tremendously painful depression with a lot of suicidal ideation. That's how I discovered psychedelics. When I was using it back then, every time they would show me what I was missing, hey, there's joy. Hey, there's love. You see, but after self-realization, when the joy and love was already discovered, and of course there was also a quite significant amount of spiritual arrogance, which I also observe in other people, including some teachers. They showing me the other part that I miss. Oh, you think you're so blissed out. You think you're so enlightened. Here's your pain. Here's your suffering. Here's your struggle, which has not yet been completely exhausted. And they continue to do this up until the very end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't use that much psychedelics if at all, like after self-realization, but I did meditate for like 3 hours a day. So
you did not, or you did?
I did. I instead of meditating like 3 hours a day after self-realization.
It's in my experience, it just becomes strictly impossible not to. I also meditated for like 3 or 4 hours a day after self-realization, and it was such a great pull. And at some point in time, meditation and sleep actually merged into one and single experience.
Yeah, eventually meditation and non-meditation, sleep, dream, psychedelic experiences, solves the same thing at the end. Yeah,
that's right.
Everything just become equalized.
Listen, I really enjoyed this conversation. We're at the middle of our time, and I was wondering if you would like to answer some of the questions of my students.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, by the way, Frank. A wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Artem. Yeah, I don't talk to a lot of people about this stuff, so
I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. Okay, let me. Okay, here they are. So, Anata Boy is asking Frank, did you notice any changes in your approach to lifting and exercise with emotional healing? The whole no pain, no gain attitude seems crazy now. It feels like high effort in particular, pushing all the way to failure, is just hurting my body, especially on heavier compounds. Even hyping myself up with upbeat music or getting all intense before a big lift doesn't feel right. Could you share how or if your mindset has changed around training to failure / high effort training, and other general shifts and insights about movement and training?
Well, when I lift weights now, I don't lift for a purpose. It just kind of happens by itself. Sometimes when I go to the gym, it's just the universe lifting. I call it just the universe lifting. Yeah, and then my physical condition has gotten better since all these spiritual shifts. So like I can actually go to failure more. Like the pain tolerance in my body has increased tremendously. Like I can work out more without exhaustion, without grasping for air, but at the same time, I don't feel like I need to work out. So you kind of have both sides of the. You kind of have, you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Do you do it for pleasure?
I don't do it. I don't do it for anything. Well, I like the sensation of lifting. Sure, yeah. But I mean, like the sensation is lifting is just the sensation of lifting. But I'm not doing it for like taking pictures of my. But I used to do it for like taking pictures of my body.
Yeah, me too.
Nothing wrong with that. But like there's just nothing in me that wants to do that right now, right? So I'm lifting more often without getting tired. But at the same time, I don't really care about it. So like I said, you get to have your cake and eat it too with some of the insights in spirituality.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I don't really have that much to say about lifting. It's just something.
No, you answered the question perfectly. Thank you.
To me, it's like eating.
Thank you very much. Next question. Ivo asks Frank, I am currently struggling with moments of intense fear. How was your experience with fear after self-realization was approaching? Did you experience any psychotic episode? Did you encounter a fear barrier before the realization? How was your experience in this regard?
Oh yeah, lots of psychotic episodes. Lots of fear. Like there were times when I was laying in my bed for like weeks at a time, just crying, think I'm gonna die. And there are moments where I felt like if I let go, I'm gonna die. If I don't let go, I'm gonna die. So there's like fucking nothing you can do. Yeah, so lots of fear. I think this whole path can be summed up as just breaking through fear barriers. And fear barriers are just conditionings because we're so attached to our conditionings, and the conditioning are so close to who we think we are that you feel like you're dying when you dissolve in those conditioning. But in reality, like an illusion can't really die. So there's actually all those pain, all those fears are actually completely irrational in retrospect. But when you're dissolving, it's like life and death. And there are moments where I felt like I was going crazy, like I was. But during the unfoldment, I'll be like waking up in the morning, and then boom, I'll be feeling like I'm tripping like LSD or like DMT, whatever. Like during my Kundalini stuff. But I was actually getting really attached to that thing too. I was like, holy shit, my mind can produce DMT-like experiences. I must have some like a meditation superpower. But then looking back at it, that was just the byproduct of dissolution. Yeah, a lot of manic episodes, a lot of anger, fear. Anything you name it, yeah. And then it was way more intense than before self-realization, or before the journey started. Now it's just like when you feel angry, it's like quote unquote God is feeling angry. It was just everything was just more intense. Yeah.
Nothing to add here. Perfect answer.
But now it's just like I'm so fucking happy all the time. But it's not. I'm not happy for anything. Yeah, but there's no bliss. There's no darkening of the soul. There's no trippy visuals, even when I take psychedelics. So.
Yeah, I mean, you heard him. My dear students, I have nothing to add. Okay, another question for you. The cool guy is asking you, what led you down the spiritual path? I always saw you as such an inspiring, albeit highly eccentric artist who seemed kind of happy to me. But clearly, you must have been suffering enough to go down this road.
Oh, I was suffering a lot. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, actually. Yeah, and then I'll get suicidal every time my girlfriend breaks up with me, and every time things don't go my way. Yeah, I was super depressed, and a lot of isolation between manic episodes and depression. Yeah, so people look at my videos and they don't see that, but actually,
we all hide it so well, don't we, Frank?
Was that?
We all hide it so well, don't we, Frank?
Yeah. I didn't even try to hide it. Some of my videos you see, I'm like fucking crying. I feel myself crying, lifting. I hated lifting, whatever, but I was still going through the motion. But there are also moments where I was like very happy. But I think suffering was just one of the reasons why I got into spirituality. I think another reason was that I just wanted to explore the mind. I wanted to explore, what the fuck this is. But then at the end, you realize you don't actually fucking know anything. If you quote unquote become reality, you can't really know it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah. So at the end, it's just you come full circle. You just become completely ignorant.
Yes.
I have no problem admitting that I don't know anything, that I'm, stupid as fuck. When some people, like, I have a person in my group who wrote this long message about AIs. I was like, but I'm the coach of the group. But I don't feel like I'm the coach of the group. I feel like I'm just part of the group. But there were sometimes people will be sending me like stuff that I don't understand, like AI stuff. I'm just like, I'm too dumb to understand that.
Yes, and you cannot comprehend reality. Only suffering and the ego can be known. As we uncover and drop away our conditionings, we also understand it. So, but the good news is that the amount of conditioning is finite. The reality is infinite, and so reality cannot be comprehended. The reality can only be merged with.
You can only become reality. You can't comprehend it.
Yes, and there's an obvious reason for that. The brain, just the amount of neurons in the brain is finite, but the universe is infinite. Mm-hmm. No finite, infinitesimally small part of something infinite and large can comprehend the whole infinity. It can only be lived. But the suffering of the ego is not infinite. Otherwise, enlightenment would not be possible. So the suffering of the ego, the sickness and the despair of the human psyche, the way how conditioning is created can be comprehended. And it is slowly as we see it in ourselves and we dissolve it. but I personally didn't have BPD, but so I got enlightened at 40, and probably around half of my life before, let's say, the age of puberty and 40, I'm 46 now, I spent in depressions. But I didn't have BPD. But it's the same. Like it's the same causes, and everyone suffers slightly differently.
And I think that person also mentioned me being an artist, and a part of why I got into meditation was for aesthetic reasons. Just like the kind of the perceptual shift you go through by deconditioning the ego mind, everything becomes so vibrant and beautiful. It's like everything that I got out of music, art, dance, or whatever, I used to get it like a dopamine fix whenever I create something. But now it's just here every single moment.
Well, like, you sure took it deeper than you expected.
I'm constructing this whole thing, and this is so beautiful, right? And then before I had to like practice the violin. I still like practice the violin sometimes, but everything is just like icing on the cake right now. Like I don't need any of that stuff, including bodybuilding.
Yes, of course. Yes,
and not just like the perception thing. There's just a sense of beauty that can't even be described. It goes beyond even the senses.
Yes, life is extraordinarily beautiful. Yes. All right, next question. Hajar is asking both. Frank, your approach focuses on training awareness like you would to any muscle in the body. Whereas you, Artem, focus on trauma, healing, and self-love. Concepts that aren't part of Frank's main vocabulary. I'm not sure about that, but let's continue. I'd like both of you to comment on each other's approach and why you're prioritizing your current one. And then Alex adds to that. Expanding on Hajar's question, can you specifically identify how, if at all, they are different from each other, these approaches, or how they are completely the same?
Yeah, I think they're the same thing. It's just you approach from a different angle. Yeah, I tend to talk about more like the perceptual side of the spiritual path. Like sometimes I'll describe the perceptual shift one goes through, and you tend to focus more on the emotional side. And then I started doing the more on the emotional side after self-realization, when the perceptual shift has been maxed out. I was like, there's nothing left to go. You have to look into your body and dissolve the rest of the conditioning. That's where the clearing up happens. Yeah. So I did a lot of emotional work as well. I just tend not to talk. Also because the way that I like to talk about it in my videos, because like I'm an artist, so I like to focus on like the sort of the aesthetic, the visual aspects.
I think that also you like to inspire people about what's possible.
Yeah, that too. Like before, I was like, "Hey, you look at this movie, how beautiful this is! Hear this piece of music, or like take LSD." Like now, it's just like, okay, look at the possibility your mind can experience if you don't.
And I like to scare people a little bit.
People, yeah. I just think it's more sexy to talk about like consciousness and awareness training. Also, because I came from a bodybuilding background, so I like to use an analogy, so it's like bodybuilding training and like awareness training. But the way I look at it now, there's no awareness training. You can't train awareness. Awareness, whatever that is just awareness is 100% aware when you just do nothing. Training is a kind of straining, right? But throughout the process, you can kind of use your attention to like dissolve the body mind through like vipassana or self-inquiry. But at the end of the day, all that's just a means to an end. You kind of have to construct a seeker, construct a meditator, construct a vipassanalizer. But at the end of the day, you have to dissolve the meditator, the vipassanalizer. Even the process of vipassanalizing has to be dissolved as well. And this is what it is. It can't be any simpler.
My dear students, this insightful person whom I love very much is precisely on point in everything that he said. So you cannot train awareness. You cannot even train unconditional love. You can learn to become more compassionate to yourself as a gateway into practice, and that actually can be an important practice if you're habitually very, very harsh to yourself. But when we're speaking about this phenomenological, about this phenomena, awareness and equanimity, you cannot train it. So you said also that you began to talk more about emotions later in the journey, and my observation was that that's a sign of deep spiritual maturity, and it happens to a lot of teachers. Like this is actually what separates more mature teachers from less mature teachers. Like, for example, if you look at Adyashanti's work, Adyashanti is a very mature teacher. He speaks, of course, about awareness and about enlightenment, but notice how frequently he speaks about the human. He speaks about embodiment, right? Because the spiritual path is not about awareness. Awareness does not need you. Awareness is always here.
Yeah, awareness not you, consciousness not you. Now that's you.
Yeah, the spiritual path is about a complete transformation of the human, right? And in my experience, the depth that I have reached showed me that it's actually all that it's about. And from some perspective, we can even say that the spiritual path, the entirety of it, is about the pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even about love, because love is always here. Love is always here. You can only be disconnected from it and blinded by the pain. So it is the suffering of the ego that needs to be investigated. It is the pain. It is our discontent. It is our wounds that need to be investigated. So my position on it is actually quite extreme even, but to me it is much more rational and reasonable than what I see some other teachers say, because my position is very simple. My position is that if you continue to practice accepting experience for what it is, including uncomfortable experience, which at the before self-realization, like even at the dream state, can be described as emotional maturity, basically. So how emotionally mature you are. So how easy it is for you to stay with an emotion without reacting to it. So if you continue on this work, then all the shifts in awareness are bound to happen, because there's nowhere left to go. Yeah. And also, what I say sometimes is that that's exactly the reason why a lot of teachings fail. If you look at the success rate of most teachers, it is dismal, right? I don't want to boast very much, but it is actually true that most of my students continually deepen. And I also teach a lot of students that are awake already, and they just go deeper and deeper. Because you see, if you just simply point to awareness again and again and again and again, then if the person isn't emotionally ready for what's going to happen after the awareness is found and it starts to explore all the pain and difficulty and fear, it's just not going to happen ever. And even the only function even to be talking about awareness to a person who doesn't understand it and gets frustrated about it is to arise frustration. And so if a person is not ready for it, then only two things can happen. It's either no realization, no shift is going to happen, or there's going to be some sort of a temporary psychosis, which is the case with psychedelics and things like that.
A lot of people going through the journey.
My approach is very different.
Identification of awareness, or the identification to like God consciousness or anything like that, which will also be a byproduct of not dealing with your emotional stuff.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So my approach is very different. I rarely talk about awareness. Of course, if I'm asked, I will respond. But I focus on the human. So we talk about the struggles. We talk about the pains. We talk about the trauma. We talk about the lies in the mind, because every trauma is associated with a lie in the mind. All pain in the mind is from lies. So if you're painful, it means that on some level you're fooling yourself, you are deceiving yourself, you believe the mind's lies. And so we investigate that. We investigate the false beliefs, and we investigate how they are connected to the pain that arises in the body, emotional or energetic. And then everything else, all the shifts that I described in in this question that Frank read in the beginning of our conversation will just happen.
Yeah, I think a better way to describe training awareness is training your attention. Like some practice, you just move your attention around to like deconstruct, dissolve solidity. And if you dissolve the solidity in the head, Adi Ashana say first you wake up in the head. That just means you dissolve some solidity in the head, and you go deeper. And then you say you open up in the heart. You wake up in the heart and in the gut. That just means you're going deeper into the conditioning of the body.
Yes.
And then the deeper you go into the body, the more boundless awareness is. It seems like that to the mind, that it's still dreaming.
That's right.
You get a feeling of like awareness as this bubble that keeps bending like the jhanas and things like that. But that's actually just the dissolution of the dream.
That's right. Yes, that's why there are no jhanic states.
Yes. Yeah, it's impossible to jhana.
That's right.
In a natural state, actually, you can kind of fabricate jhana from the non-dual state, but it's not the same as before. There's no like subject object split. There's no merging in anything. You don't merge with the awareness or anything like that. And like I said earlier, once your awareness recognizes itself, awareness disappears. Yes. So that's why it's also like I also tend to realize the way I talk about things. I used to say awareness a lot, or like consciousness, but now those words don't really mean anything to me. Even the word emptiness. When I look into the world, I don't see like consciousness. I don't see like emptiness. I don't see like formless like consciousness. Like the best way to describe what this is just a cup, right? But it's like, you know, first there's a mountain, and then there's no mountain, and then there's a mountain again. But sure, now the way you experience everything is radically different. There is a transformation, but at the same time, there isn't.
Yes. As I said it in one of my answers, when the cup of tea is just a cup of tea to you, you're not a I don't know what it is, not like consciousness, not some sort of a, like, I don't know. I don't remember. I wrote it quite well, but I don't remember it. So
it's like if you go on a date with a girl and she asks you to hand her a cup of like tea, and you say, "Oh, this is emptiness," she's gonna think you're crazy, and she's right.
Yes, she's right. Yes,
the concept of the cup of tea arises in the moment, and in that moment, the concept of the tea is all there is. So the concept becomes the absolute, quote unquote. It's not like there's anything behind the concept of the tea. The concept of tea doesn't really point to anything. It's just, but in this moment, that's the most pragmatic way to respond to another human.
Yes.
But if you talk to someone who's like really into Buddhism, you're like, okay, this is suchness. Sure, that's correct too.
Yes.
You can say this is consciousness. They're just like labels.
No, you're absolutely right to notice the insanity of it. We actually, we actually can even describe the non-duality. We can describe non-duality quite accurately as the long stage of different continuously diminishing levels of insanity. So the most insane state is the dream state, right? Then all of this, everything is me, is less insanity.
Yeah.
Nothing is me, emptiness is less insanity. And then the enlightened state is the ultimately sane state, and it's also the most rational state.
It's also the most flexible state. You almost become the shapeshifter. It's like, sure, I can call the cup awareness, but there's no reaction in it. There's no like, whoa, I know this is awareness, you don't kind of feeling.
That's right.
It is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I also wanted to comment on something that you mentioned. You mentioned attention, and I love that you did this, because I oftentimes say to my students that, you know what, the truth is that the only actual thing that you control on the spiritual path is the movement of your attention. Nothing else.
Nothing else. The only thing you can let go of is your direction of attention. Actually, if you just let go of your direction of attention, you let go of all cravings. Because all there is to craving is this sort of contraction in your direction of attention. So there's a practice called twin, which just asks you to be mindful of your direction of attention. And once you recognize your direction of the attention is going to your thought, then you just release that. Like that's all there is to being lost in thought. It's just the direction of attention going to thought. Yes. And if you see like a beautiful woman, and you are craving for her, your direction of attention is going there. And that's all you need to pay attention to, honestly. But then some people's mindfulness isn't good enough to see that yet. So they need to do something like watching the breath or scanning the body. But like even with your kind of teaching, you focus on emotion. That too is a kind of attention training.
Yes.
You're focusing on your emotion instead. Like I tend to focus on like, you know, stuff in the head, like the knots of perception. That's the way I like to describe things. You know?
It's also an important part of the path, because the mind, you see,
that's also part of emotion as well. Like
right,
it's kind of a suffering in the mind, in the head area.
but also what tends to happen, this is true, but also what tends to happen, and it cannot be rejected also, is that as we receive insights, and every insight is just a remembering. So you've always known that. Like every authentic insight is you've always known that, and you just dropped away some falsehood. So as we receive insights, the mind has a tendency to chew on it for a while. The mind has a tendency to like look at it from different perspective, think it over, right? So if this is what's happening, that could also be important. So and with regard, by the way, as you were speaking about attention, the direction of attention, with regards to the spiritual work, the emotional work, the energetic work, the most important practice is to actually reverse the habitually conditioned direction of attention, because in the dream state we redirect our attention habitually away from everything that we don't like, and then the spiritual
things we like. Same thing. Yeah.
Or do things we like, right? Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But it is still artificial. So that's clinging and avoidance in Buddhism. Yeah. That's Buddhism one-on-one for you. So you either direct it away from something that you don't like, or try to artificially create something that you like, and you chase it and you direct it towards there, but you don't want to look at what is.
You're right. That's
so you. And that's what you can do, and everything else you have little control over, and it happens by itself.
Yeah, even the direction of attention is also happening by itself too, like ultimately. Yes. Yeah, but then once you realize that,
ultimately, yes, when the practice becomes effortless, and then you have no choice in it. It's like everything that arises uncomfortable that still needs healing or integration, it receives your attention effortlessly. Yes.
Effortlessly, and then at the end, like we said, things disappear. Even the direction of attention disappears. At the end.
Yes.
The direction of attention is what's created the subject-object duality. You have a direction of attention pointing from the subject to the object, and you create this duality of separation.
But this is true. But I wanted to mention, just in the interest of clarity, that it doesn't mean, like what Frank just said, it doesn't mean that in the completely light state you cannot focus on something.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It just means that there is no internal struggle going on.
Right.
And all of the senses and perceptions, like the five aggregates, like the vision and all of that, are perceived effortlessly at the same time, and no emotional energetic disturbances are no longer present.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Next question. Kinho asks, what are some distinguishing factors, and that's to both. So what are some distinguishing factors between someone who stalls after self-realization versus someone who reaches full enlightenment?
You can go first.
What we just discussed.
Yeah, I think we talked about that already. Yes. Like people who get stuck.
Exactly this. Yeah. So focusing on
everything we talked about in this talk has been about that, actually.
Yes. So focusing on the human, not rejecting pain, continuing practicing accepting, bringing up unconscious pains that are supporting the lies of the mind, that are intimately connected with the lies of the mind. So just this, like this continued working on the awareness. And honesty, yes, honesty, deep honesty. And also, by the way, very important, not trying to avoid any sort of emotional, energetic discomfort that can be risen from the conversations with other people, for as long as it is safe for you. Right. So obviously you don't want to seek out very dangerous people that can hurt you. But if you if you don't have any reasons to believe that you can be physically hurt, and this individual is just, I don't know, irritating, disgusting, like you experience fear towards them or contempt or things like that, not avoiding that, keep investigating it.
Yeah, I actually think sorry, I had to readjust my camera. One of my camera died. So I actually think like interacting with people is one of the best tools for integration. Because like you said, the ego is a construct out of human interactions, right? So,
and not just with your students, by the way.
Yeah,
like, because this question is in context of like deep, and not just with people who look up to you.
Yeah, or people
everybody.
who don't look up to you, like just
Yes.
respect people in general, because ultimately I think the spiritual path is about having better relationships. Actually.
Yes. All right, so we have three more. James is asking. James has three questions. So James is asking, how does symbolic language, metaphors, abstraction, and poetry, for instance, affect us differently from specific technical language, terms like self-structure, identity, immediate experience, as examples, in a spiritual context?
I'm not sure what he's asking.
So okay, I actually think I understand what he's asking, and let me address that. So he's asking, what are the different roles of some spiritual texts that you read, which are poetic, emotional, metaphors, parables, story tales, or some more technical texts that you read that talk about awareness, self-structure, the structure of beliefs, and things like that. And my answer to that, let me start with that since I could interpret it. And so my answer to that would be that they both can be important and both can be useful, and they carry very different functions. The first one is designed to create an emotional or energetic response in you. So when you read someone like Osho, when you read someone like me, read it meditatively. Notice what it creates in you. So I do both. In my writings, they're both sort of emotionally punching and beautiful, and also very technical and describing.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of the things I like about your writing. It's very technical and actually it's quite emotional.
Yes.
But it's also, it's just very poetic, but at the same time, it's almost like a computer scientist writing it.
Yes, it's very poetic, but it's also very clear. It's also very precise.
Very clear, yeah.
Yes. And so the part of this, thank you, by the way, I appreciate it. So the part of it that is emotional, the part of it that is energetic, is the meditative aspect of it. It is designed to arise something in you, like maybe fear, maybe anger, maybe sadness. It has this function, and then the part of it that is technical, explanatory, so to say, right? It is designed to foster your understanding about what's going on with you, and it has a function. It has a sort of a reassuring function, so to say, because it helps you understand the process that you're going through on the intellectual level, which on the intellectual level is oftentimes completely maddening. It's very hard to understand. It's a very confusing process. There's a lot of confusion in it, right? So it helps you to clear up the confusion and give you some reassurance from this perspective, whereas this other part constantly kind of triggers you in different ways and pulls you deeper into your experience.
Yeah, some of the writings, it's kind of like the way I describe things. It's kind of like, okay, I describe how the perceptive shifts through civilization, and then you can kind of tap into that. But then some of the writings triggers you emotionally, and you kind of need both.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes the writings can be a little bit more like a Zen koan that makes you kind of like go beyond the mind, so to speak. There's a more like contemplation-based writing, but then there's more like human emotional work kind of writings that are meant to trigger you emotionally versus trigger you to go out of your mind. And then some practices are not writings at all. They're like breathing exercises. They're more like maybe for the gut, or just for the deeper regions of the body, or like kundalini yoga, or even going out for a walk. So spirituality can be attacked from all different angles. So that's why every single teacher is relevant. Can be very helpful.
Yes.
Like Wim Hof was more relevant to me after celularization than some of the like Jen McKenna. Because like Wim would say, just breathe. And I felt like breath work actually cleaned out a lot of my conditionings. And that was kind of bypasses the conceptual mind and just go to the body and just like physically breathe out some of the blockages in the body. That was very helpful. So, they all have their potency in there. It depends on where you're on the path and how you're wired. Yeah.
Agreed. Wonderful. Next question. James is asking both of us, I have an experience of what feels like non-separation, but I still have an inclination to try to change something about my experience. I feel like I'm seeing clearly, but I'm not at ease. What is going on here? Please.
When we say non-separation, that could be a stage of like oneness. Like to me, this state is neither one nor the many. You're neither one with the universe nor are you separate. So like the oneness phase, there can still be a lot of things that can be worked through. So I'm not sure what you mean by non-separation, but actually the state of like non-doership, even you can even go beyond non-doership, because the feeling of non-doership actually only arises through the feeling of the doership.
That's right.
The feeling of no self actually arises only out of the self.
Yes.
So you go beyond the duality of self and no self, like non-duality and duality. So that's why there's still not very clear. If you
so my answer to that would be very different. Would be very similar, and in line with what we discussed before. So even in the states of non-separation, the ego is still there, right? It's been disidentified with. That's why you're feeling oneness.
Yeah.
But it's still there, and it's experienced as emotional, energetic pains. That's why you're not at ease. Like Osho once said, but the mind that is not still is. or Adyashanti said once, if you think like ego cannot exist in sublime high states of consciousness, think again. So both of these teachers are precisely right, and you will continue to experience this at ease, not at easiness, until you fully investigate it as your direct, immediate experience. And so even in the state of oneness, whenever you feel it is, not it is, ask yourself, what am I experiencing right now? Where does it hurt? Not seeking an answer from the mind, but as a direct experiential experience. Give it your attention, move it there, and investigate it. And that's the continued practice, even from the states of oneness, which one could argue are quite advanced state of consciousness if maintained effortlessly.
Yeah, I think Adyashanti said something about waking up even out of oneness, or he said realizing the absolute is not yet enlightenment. He's pointing to the kind of the same thing. And one can easily get clinging on to the idea of oneness, and every time they're not in the experience of oneness, they start to panic. But then, like, this is not a state. Like, oneness is a state, right? So I think one of the best ways to describe this is that you're the interaction or the intersection between infinite webs on infinite webs of cause and a condition of the universe. So you're not the whole universe, neither are you separate from it. But a lot of times when people are in the oneness space, they tend to have this whole notion about like being the entire universe or like being one with everything. If we're truly one with everything all the time, then everyone is going to know what everyone's thinking and feeling all the time.
Right. And why would anyone teach that? That would become absurd, right?
So you're not separated either. That's the thing. It's like neither or both kind of thing, right?
Yes. So sometimes like people in this sort of semi-diluted state of consciousness would tell me like, I am everything, I am you.
Right.
Stuff like that. And my response was, well, why are you talking to yourself? If you're talking to me, why are you talking to yourself? Why would anyone teach if enlightenment? That's a very big misconception about enlightenment. That enlightenment is some sort of a oneness that is physical. You see, guys, you need to understand that if enlightenment was that, like just complete emergence of everything on the physical level, right? When there is no other, like Ramana said, there is no other, and everyone's like going, there is no other. Well, if there is no other, who did Ramana teach? Mm-hmm. Think about that, right? So enlightenment is not that. Enlightenment is the ultimate wholeness of your mind,
with yourself.
Yes, with yourself, and ultimate freedom from the suffering in the mind. It is a painless mind, and then you help other people attain the same because there's so much compassion for their. Not as a painful experience, but as an understanding that there's so much compassion for their struggle, and you remember how you struggled yourself, right? But it doesn't mean the universe doesn't exist. It's all just this crazy thought. Like someone would say, the universe doesn't exist, nothing exists, because every time that I go into deep sleep, it disappears. Well, I say, okay,
that's for you. Yeah, that's true for you.
Yeah, that's fine. So come to my house. Go into very deep sleep, and I'll wait until they go into very deep sleep, and then I'll pour some water, and then we will go, ugh! And I would be like, did it disappear?
Yeah.
Try again. You see, so there are a lot of delusions in the mind with regards to this. A lot of people think that it's some sort of a real physical emergence. It only feels this way when you have a very profound experience. It's from the egoic perspective. So when you have a very profound experience in the dream state of the state of unity, that's what it feels like. But so any sorts of crazy ideas about how for as long as you have the body you cannot be enlightened, or that you might get enlightened by committing suicide, throw it out of your mind. All of this is bullshit, complete bullshit, and suicide is the biggest mistake that you can possibly make.
I do want to say something about the oneness thing. It's like, yeah, I do think there's some kind of it does feel like you're one physically and visually one with your experience, but that doesn't mean there's no other people.
That's
like,
right.
Everybody, if everybody become awakened, everybody would feel like they're an entire universe.
Yes.
And there's still other people that feel like that. So at the same time, like, we can't really know what's out there. We can't know what other people actually are. But then that doesn't mean they don't exist. So you can't say other people exist. You can't say they don't exist either. Yeah. So that's
and if everyone were enlightened, we would just finally have a sane society. So it's not like
it wouldn't even say things like oneness or separate.
Yes, exactly. No one who has not been wounded and abused can possibly seek. You also need to understand that, right? So if you seek an enlightenment, it means that you're suffering. No one, because it's a natural state of consciousness. And there are also some other absurd ideas in spirituality, like, for example, that the goal of the ultimate Buddha is to teach, and there is no other reason for the Buddha to live their life. This is insanity, because it means that it's self-contradictory. Because why does the Buddha teach? So they teach, for example, to help others. So presumably, the goal is that everyone around is enlightened. But if everyone around is enlightened and there is no other enjoyment or purpose in life than to teach, then there is no one left to be taught. And then the only outcome of this enterprise is to commit mass suicide. This, my friend, is insanity, right?
It's a psychological suicide, but no organism wants to kill their bodies, actually.
Exactly, right?
Put a gun to their head when they want to kill themselves. They want to kill their inner voice.
Yes,
no organism wants to kill their own bodies.
That's right. Yeah. That's right, my friend. Yes, they want to kill the ego. And something else I wanted to mention to this regard. I forget.
Wait, before we go to the next question, I do have a little bit more time. I need to charge my computer. We have a couple more questions, right?
I have.
I think we can get.
Yeah, I have like 2 or 3 more questions.
I need to charge my computer real quick.
Yes, please.
Here, then I think we can get to them.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Okay, I can just plug this in because my computer is almost out. All right.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. That's it.
So James is asking us both. My sense of being is changing from thoughts to being more encompassing of other areas of experience. That's wonderful. That's, by the way, what the expansion of consciousness feels like. What does this shift entail, and how can I be more at ease with this process? It's very destabilizing. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you said go ahead.
My webcam fell.
Okay, let me.
We can just edit this too, right?
There is no need.
Okay.
My sense of being is changing from thoughts to being more encompassing of other areas of experience. What does this shift entail, and how can I be more at ease with this process? It's very destabilizing.
Yeah, it just means you're now more disidentified from thoughts. Now your senses are open up to other aggregates. That's it. So, but that might feel destabilizing because you're spending your whole life being identified with thoughts. It seems like you have nothing to hang on to because we hang on to our thoughts all the time, like for our whole life. Now, for the first time, you feel like you don't need to let go of thoughts. So the rest of the condition is still trying to hold on. So that's where the discomfort is. But then you just keep letting that go. Just keep falling into the free fall process, and then open yourself up to other sense stories and see how beautiful it is beyond thoughts, and you get used to it. Yeah.
I don't have anything to add. It's
Yeah, the ego always is going to try to come back and clean harder whenever it's bits of it has been seen through. So that's completely normal.
That's true. Yes.
So
Yes. Okay. Next question. TJ is asking you.
oh.
Can you share your thoughts about the Goenka Vipassana retreats? Is there a particular kind of person you think those retreats can work better than others?
I think the advice I give people who ask you those kind of questions, like what kind of practice works, is that, well, first of all, every practice, if done right, leads to the same place. Right?
Yes.
And second of all, you don't know until you try it. So everybody's kind of wired differently, and then depends on your past experiences and what kind of practice you have in the past, or like how you're genetically wired. So like my advice is just to try a practice out for maybe 2 weeks to a month, and to meditate at least maybe 45 minutes. Because I think the 45-minute mark, I read research on this, 45 minutes mark is when meditation really started kicking. It's just like anything else. Like you need to try for a while to see like what works, right? So try to Goenka if you want for like a couple of weeks, a month, and see how your mind is changing, how your emotion is changing. And then if it doesn't work, switch to another practice. Switch to maybe on the other side of the extreme is like the do nothing meditation. Then you switch to that, or switch to like self-inquiry, or mix them up. It's like fitness. There's different ways you can mix up the practices. You just gotta try and see what works. And my fitness coach used to say the best practice is the one you haven't tried. So that kind of works too in meditation or spirituality too. Just try all that. I think the most important factor is to see the interconnectivity between all the practices, because ultimately there's no practice at all. All practices are constructs that you're fabricating in order to destroy itself, in a sense. So that's another thing that people get stuck on is practice. It's like the way they're like, you see how people go to the gym like for years and years on end and they don't make progress. But why did they do those kind of routines? It worked for them in the past, but then they keep going back to what worked for them in the past, right? So same with like spirituality practice.
Yes, I agree with everything that you said, and you're right that all practices lead to the same destination. There's only one enlightenment. Like people who say that there are different enlightenment, you don't know what you're talking about. So there's only one enlightenment, and all the paths, including Buddhism, Hinduism, and all forms of practice, is designed to move you deeper and deeper to it. There are a lot of practices that could be useful. Not, and some of them aren't even very spiritual. Like radical honesty can be very useful practice. So being open, even nonviolent communication, a practice of identifying your emotion and looking inside and communicating it non-aggressively can be very good practice, because you will have to feel it when you do that. Yeah. And Vipassana, different forms of meditation. Ecstatic dancing, which is basically just a form of dance trance.
It's a very good way to decondition social conditioning.
Yes.
Or social anxiety.
Yeah. Yes. So many building intimacy. Like on my retreats, we have exercise of looking in each other's eyes for like 5 minutes, and people say, how much does it arise? If you take an average couple, even a married couple, and give them an exercise of looking into each other's eyes for 5 minutes, an average couple would find it deeply uncomfortable. Well,
I said the same thing this morning when I was recording a video. I was talking about this exercise of looking at each other's eye. That's a really good way to dissolve conditioning.
Yes.
Most people will feel more awkward looking at each other in the eye in silence than having sex with a stranger.
That's exactly. Oh, by the way, so
absurd, right?
What a punchy but truthful way to say that. I'm stealing this from you, my friend. This is absolutely correct.
I think you should put this in like the beginning of the video. Like sometimes you put a little clips in the beginning to like hook people in. Like this would be a good one.
That's a really good one. That's actually profoundly true, and it's very sadly true, because just the fact that a married couple people who are married, for example, looking into each other's eyes for 5 minutes, and they begin feeling uncomfortable, they begin laughing weirdly and things like that. It points to only one thing, which is how little intimacy there exists in most relationships. So this can be a great practice. Any practice that is aimed at increasing intimacy with yourself or with the other. So you can approach it from different directions. Is a good form of practice. Meditation is the ultimate practice of increasing intimacy with yourself, because it completely cuts you out from anyone else and you're in solitude. But it's not the only form of practice. So any practice that moves you into the direction of intimacy with yourself or the other is a good form of practice.
Beautiful.
Okay, next question.
It's not about the practice,
Yeah.
the technique. Yeah.
Yes. Kaz is asking both. And that's the last question, by the way, my friend. I would love it if you guys explored or touched on sexuality a bit, as it is an area I have very little experience in, and would love to hear you guys have a conversation about it. It's a sort of a vague question. That's why I put it at the end.
Okay, I think I used to be a sex addict, and that's why one of the reasons why I got into meditation. That was causing me a lot of suffering, just the fact that I wanted to fuck girls all the time and cheat on my girlfriend all the time. And now it's like my sex drive has been the lowest in my whole life. Like I barely have any sex drive when I'm not having sex. But when I do have sex, it feels better than ever before, because I'm totally present with that person or with that experience.
And there's also much deeper feeling.
There's no emotional pain. There's no attachment there. No emotional pain. It becomes almost completely physical. It feels like non-sex sex. Yeah.
Yes.
So again, like I said earlier, you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
And it's not with food. Like anything sensory pleasures, you can experience even more greater, while at the same time there's no attachment or clinging to it. Because the attachment and clinging actually dulls the experience. So that's my experience with sex. But I do find that there's a lot of practices around sex too, like tantra sex, where you kind of abide in non-duality while having sex. That's actually a really good practice, because a lot of our conditions are revolved around sex or romance relationships.
Oh, so many.
Because that's the biggest conditioning for most people, because we're biological creatures that are evolved to reproduce. So any kind of things that will bring up the most primal conditioning while you're performing that and abiding in awareness or whatever, it's also really good practice. So sex is never something you should shy away from. It's something you need to be integrated. So it's not like you shy away from sex or be absent from sex. You integrate the shadowy part of sex into the life, so that sex can just be enjoyed as part of life's process. Yeah.
Yes, this is precisely right on all counts. And I wasn't a sex addict formally. I mean, I classify sex addicts as people who need to have sex with actual people frequently. Otherwise, they really suffer. So, like if you need to masturbate frequently, I wouldn't classify you as a sex addict.
I was a sex addict. I needed to. If I didn't have sex with different women every 2 weeks, I would like go insane. Like I would suffer so much, and then I'll get a temporary release from the suffering, but boom, just goes right back in this reciprocal, like the way of samsara, basically.
That would fit my definition, yes. and he, Frank is exactly right when he says that sex actually becomes more physically pleasurable, but much less eventful emotionally, and much less needed, and it sort of becomes a small part of life, which it should be. Just in both animals, sex is not a very frequent occurrence. It doesn't mean
they need to fuck, right?
Yes.
They don't think about fucking when they're not fucking.
Exactly.
You can fuck.
Exactly. And the same thing happens with food. And
exactly.
Frank is also exactly right when he says that sex is very, very deeply conditioned. So it's one of the most deepest issues. The deepest issues in the conditioned mind are sex and death. Mm-hmm. And those are obviously
actually the same thing. Sex, death, and love are actually the same thing when you integrate them. Yeah.
So sex is related to life, to reproduction. Death is related to end of it. So obviously they're the deepest things. And sex is so deep also because in our society, we have an extremely perverse attitude towards sex. And I'm not talking about over-sexualization, which adds to it. I'm talking about shame. So the example that I often give is that, so you're born into this society, and as soon as you're like 2 or 3 years old, you're always clothed. You never see naked people. You never see sex. You are actively taught that being naked is not okay, that being naked is shameful, or touching yourself is not okay. You always need to cover up. So as a consequence, there is a tremendous amount of shame over sex, and we tend to confuse sex with love. It's interconnected in our psyches in quite perverse ways sometimes that are difficult to untangle. And when I say perverse, I'm not being judgmental towards it. I'm just saying unnatural. And of course, you also need to love these parts of yourself. You cannot reject or deny your suffering. Absolutely not. You need to love everything about you. And but as a consequence, I mean, a tremendous percentage of people have some sort of a sexual dysfunction. That sex is difficult. Sex lacks intimacy, right? So a very important part of sex is intimacy. So sex is not a performance. You see, we're also taught to view sex as a performance for the other, right? But sex is a joyful experience which you share with another. And it's a very different attitude towards sex. And I think this attitude is much, much, much healthier.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like having sex while you're still in separation versus sex when you're already complete is almost totally different.
Completely different, yes.
Yeah. The latter, you can have sex can be as dirty as you want, but it still feels like pure and clean.
Yes.
Because all that is just like your emotional like suffering and baggage is all shame, for example. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, there was last question. What can I tell you, Frank? It has been, for me, by far, the most pleasurable and enjoyable conversation with any spiritual teacher that I have ever had. And I'm infinitely grateful to you for it.
Thank you. Same to you. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I wanted to say to the viewers that I will publish this video on my channel. I will also send it to Frank, and he will publish it on his channel. There will be links in this video to all of my work. So the website, Discord, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and I've also put links to Frank's work, so you can follow us both, learn from us both. You don't have to be beholden to any particular teacher. The journey is yours. The teacher is successful when you no longer need him. That is the only measure of the teacher's success. And so I will, or by the way, another way to put it is, the way to evaluate a teacher is how consistently he helps you to notice something in your experience which you previously did not notice or was in denial of. So that's another measure. And you can work with as many teachers as you like. Please do not follow any sort of cultish traditions. And so I will post all these links. Please feel free to reach out to me. My students, please feel free to reach out to Frank. We are considering with Frank. We haven't decided yet, but we are considering to maybe organizing and hosting a mutual retreat where we both could teach and have talks and some practices. So if you're interested in that, you can also mention it to us. It's only in a conversational stage. If it happens, then we will also announce it and ask those interested participants. By the way, my friend, you're still on the
Maryland.
What?
East Coast, Maryland.
East Coast, Maryland. Oh yes, I remember. Yes, I used to live there for a little while.
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned that before.
Yeah, Frederick. I used to live in Frederick.
That's really close. I'm in Rockville.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Rockville. I drove to Rockville.
I lived in Rockville 15. No,
yeah.
12.
So you also mentioned once that you consider moving to California.
Yeah, I consider moving somewhere. I think either New York or California or maybe Florida. I'm not sure yet.
So
I think I'll spend the next year here or traveling. So I might travel to California. Then we can do it there if we decide to do it. While I'm traveling there, but I don't think I'm gonna permanently move to California that hasn't been decided yet. So But
So I think it depends on the people that will express interest, obviously, right? So if we do like a retreat for, let's say, 30 or 50 people, right, like a big one, then if most of those people are in your area, I will obviously fly to you. If most of those people are in my area, then you can fly to me, or maybe it can even be in the middle. So it depends on the people that will come. And also, next time you're in Bay Area, let's hang out.
Yeah, we can do a talk in person too.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, my love. I loved it so much. Thank you.
I loved it too.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. May this conversation help all suffering people.
Thank you, Artem.
Bye, my friend.
Bye bye.